my company, 3 Peak Coaching and Solutions, we've created a model that unifies all of these methods into one. We call this the Master Leadership Model. The Master Leadership Model brings all the theory of leadership together and makes it super simple. But while it is simple, it is not necessarily easy. It is the task of a lifetime to master leadership. But when we master leadership, we glide through life with ease because we know how to face challenges, how to move through complexity. The Master Leadership Model has 3 components, the 3 S's. We have the self, the situation, the strategy. Between these 3, if you can master how to lead yourself, how to understand the situation, and how to create a strategy that bridges between the 2, you can accomplish anything that you want in this life. And so we go through each of the 3 S's to understand a little bit more what it takes to master leadership. The first is self-leadership, self-mastery. A person who is master of themselves understands everything about their own instrument, how their own body works. So we know the physiology of our body and what it takes to keep ourselves happy, healthy, and thriving. Our physiological and biological needs take precedence. We need to sleep. We need to eat well. We need to move our bodies. We need to get regular access to water. We need to breathe. There are certain core things that keep our body happy, healthy, and thriving. It's how we feel vital in life. When we do not care about these fundamentals, our body is running under optimal levels, it is stressed, and it is sick. When we are stressed and sick, that then filters into how we make decisions, how we live our lives. When we choose to be stressed and sick, we cannot make good decisions. We cannot live full, enriched lives. So one of the steps of self-mastery is to understand the body and what the body needs to stay in equilibrium. Then we move to the emotional components of the body. Our emotions are incredible information systems. Think about all the hormones, the biology, the neurology, all the different systems of the body that interact to create emotions. There is a stimulus. We perceive it. We feel something come up. It gives us information about what to do. If we sense we're angry, we can use that aggression to fight, to defend ourselves, to create boundaries and space. If we interpret something and we feel fear, we can mobilize our legs and run away. There's incredible information when it comes to emotions. If we ignore emotions, if we suppress our emotions, we're removing an amazing technology we've developed to support us in our day-to-day life. But emotions, if we don't tend to them, they can overrun us, they can overrule us. Our desires become the main thing that we look for in life. Most people think that their desire is a non-negotiable. I want something, so I must go get it. But in actuality, we can process our desires. We can process our emotions. Just because we have an instinct or an impulse towards something doesn't mean we have to do it. We can step back and actually understand what the body is needing and then direct it to something else. Finally, we think about the mental processes that we engage in. So how we think, how our brain is operating. And there's an old saying that the mind is a great tool, but a poor master. We have yet to learn the lesson of how to really master the brain, how to deploy it strategically, how to use it to solve problems, and to know when the brain is maybe not the best information system to make decisions. So a self-master is one that understands all the components of who they are. They understand their relationship with other things and the emotions and the ideas that come up in relationship to other people, to other roles, to other places, and they can negotiate with themselves and manage themselves. So in essence, a self-master can direct themselves. They have organized their internal world, their internal state, so they can move themselves towards something. So when we talk about leadership as moving and directing energy and creating towards something, self-mastery, self-leadership is a vital component of being able to muster one's resources and organize oneself to move in a direction. I see this often with executives. Many leaders are emotional and don't know how to deal with their emotions. They either repress them or they completely act on them. And it's one and the same, because if you repress it, it's going to flare up and come back anyways. If you're just acting on emotion all the time, then you're not making rational decisions. You're not actually opening up the options that are in front of you. So these executives, they're running really high on emotion, and their careers at some point fail. They cannot maintain the direct course they want to take to get where they want. I was once working with someone who repressed their emotions severely for years. They called themselves a hyper-rational leader. I have no emotions. I'm purely logical. And they kept pushing things down, working harder. At some point, this individual started to have stress-induced seizures. They collapsed and they seized. And after several episodes, they were forced to quit work. They had to take years off of work. So where they were trying to go up the corporate ladder, all of a sudden, they're out of the game entirely. To be able to move in a direction and a sustainable direction to get what we want, we have to learn how to master ourselves. There are too many examples of leaders, executives who get everything they want, they get the big promotion, and everything in their life completely collapses. I've seen this myself with plenty of people I've coached. They get the goal and everything falls to shit. They're getting divorced, their kids are estranged, they have a huge health crisis. All of these crises start to pop up and flare up to say, what you're doing is not working, what you're doing is not healthy. So self-leadership, self-mastery is one of the greatest adventures we can go on in life and one of the most fulfilling. When we're not a leader of ourselves, we're at the whim of outside forces. So the world, people, they're all essentially acting upon us and we're just in response, just in fight, flight, or instinct, or just reacting, rather than shaping our direction, shaping our future, shaping how we move through life. When we master ourselves, we really start to master life because we know how to maintain what's inside of ourselves to move outwardly. The second component is situational leadership. So this is really about extending the senses out and understand what's happening in the world right around us. If we're not in tune with our environment, then we're going to get shocked. We're going to get hit. We're not living in reality. And humans rarely live in reality. We have these beautiful brains, but we like to conjure up pictures and stories and images of how the world should be or how we want it to be rather than the way it is. And we're in a constant tussle, a constant fight with reality. So we're reacting to things, we're angry, things aren't fair, it shouldn't be this way, I want to fight and be resentful, rather than saying reality is what reality is and we need to accept it. Reality is a feedback mechanism. When we're tapped into reality, we get information and we adapt with the environment. So we evolve and change to stay in tune with the environment. One of the ways we've horrifically gotten Darwin's social theory wrong is we say that survival of the fittest is survival of the strongest. So we've made survival of the fittest this social dominance game, but Darwin never talked about strength. Survival of the fittest is about adapting to the environment. Remember, he looked at birds, and some birds were able to get more nectar because their beaks had changed. So we don't know what's going to be the best for the environment. We can create a mental model again and project a reality of what it should be. It should be a strong man. Or we can say what really is needed in the environment. Think about the dinosaurs. The dinosaurs were huge, but when the environment changed, when the climate changed, they couldn't adapt. So they all went extinct. And yet these very small things called mammals were able to evolve, adapt, and thrive. Their small size was their survival. It was what was fitness to that environment. We cannot fully predict what will be the fittest thing. All we can do is stay in tune with the environment so we can try to change with it. I'm going to give you an example that might sound crazy. Imagine one day I say, it'll never rain again on a Monday. I fully believe it will never rain on Mondays ever again. I don't need to check the weather forecast. I don't need to get an umbrella because I know on Mondays it will never rain again. And then I go outside and I get wet. Now think about a different way of doing this, which is I tune in with my environment. I'm looking for clouds. I'm trying to feel if it's getting more humid. Is there wind coming in? Is it getting darker? I can even check the weather forecast if we have that technology. And I can say, you know what? There's a likely chance of rain. So now I know how to change my behavior. I'll bring an umbrella. I'll bring a rain jacket. I know how to adapt to this environment. I've heard in Germany they say there's no bad weather, just bad clothes. It's all about tuning into the environment and adapting to it. We can sit there and say rain is bad, storms are bad, or we can say the storm is a fact. Rain existed before humans touched this planet. Rain will exist long after humans leave it. How we adapt to rain is our task, not to constantly whinge and bitch about rain. And so the task is to attune to the environment, see that it's raining, and change along with it without a lot of resistance. This is how we get feedback and learn and adapt and grow and evolve. It is such a vital and sacred process. Humans, unfortunately, many times we have been conditioned to form a very strong ego defense. So we take it very personally when things change and we don't want to change with them. We find it scary, we find it difficult, and so rather than actually being fluid and flexible, instead we learn to create realities that don't exist. And we live inside these worlds that are built in our heads. And in the worlds we live in today, in Europe, the United States in particular, there are not many things that are checking our sense of reality. We live in such abundance and comfort that in actuality, we can kind of create whatever world we want to live in our head. We're not in a dynamic environment that's giving us a lot of cues. So many people are missing environmental cues. They're turning off their senses, they're not feeling, and they're not putting their senses out into the world. They don't want to learn, there's no feedback, there's tremendous resistance to change. So to be a master of the situation, a master of situational leadership, we must confront the reality of the world we live in. We must be in tune with the environment and change with the environment and not personalize it. Just because something has changed and now I need to change with it doesn't make me incompetent or unskilled or embarrassed. We can just go with the way things are going. It's not a personal attack. The world is not against you. The world is just existing outside of you. It is our task to move with it, to be in a dance with reality. And so this is situational leadership, knowing how to change, how to adapt, and to do it for a reason, for a purpose. Now we put the two sides together, the self and the situation. So imagine you know something is changing. There's a dynamic environment in front of you. You know it's going in a particular direction, and you need to change, you need to adapt. And you've done the homework to be able to toggle and adapt yourself, to understand what's going on inside your body so that you can transform yourself in line with the environment. So you have great sense of self, great sense of the environment, and now our third component can emerge, which is the strategy. What do I do about this? I know something is changing. I know I need to change. How do I move things in a forward direction? So we look at strategic leadership. This is all about moving yourself, people, resources in a particular direction. In a previous video, I defined leadership as the conscious process where individuals and teams drive and direct creativity. It is only at this moment, this culminating moment, when we talk about strategy and strategic leadership, that this all comes together. We've mastered the self, we've mastered the outer world, so now we can move and move tremendous things in order to get to our goal. Many leaders I work with, they focus just on the strategy. So how do I get from point A to point B? But they miss the other two steps. If you don't have self-leadership, then you don't know how to change oneself. So you're moving things in a direction, but you're only doing it with kind of one personal strategy. So let's say that someone is very orderly. They're conscientious. They like to put things in the right place. Everything's got to be fine-tuned, and they find themselves in a chaotic environment. They know they got to go from point A to point B, but their entire strategy is very rigid, very fixed. They cannot change themselves, adapt themselves to be more flexible. We can have the opposite example where someone is typically very chaotic and they need to create an orderly plan to get somewhere, and they can't do it because they're stuck in the strategy of being really loosey-goosey flexible. So being able to toggle one's behavioral strategy because one understands their own motivations, desires, body, emotions, thoughts, bring it into alignment, that is what is needed to actually execute the strategy with different skills and different ways of doing it. Now, imagine that someone is missing situational leadership, so they want to drive a strategy forward, but they have no clue what's happening in the environment. So this person is actually creating a strategy based on their mental construct. They've created a projection, a story, an image of what the world is and what the world will be. Funny enough, when researchers have looked at forecasting, so people who plan ahead and they make plans and projections about the future will be, they end up incurring much more risk, which is counterintuitive because you'd think if I plan, I should reduce the amount of risk. But people who plan, they end up becoming overconfident in assumptions that they've made and this fake world they've created, these fake realities they've created, and then the real reality never matches the plan and it all comes tumbling. So having a strategy that's not attached to reality or to the situation is insanity. It's worthless. It's a waste of time. It's a waste of effort. I would personally rather be attuned to the environment and adapt as I go than have this grand big strategy that makes me overconfident and lose touch with the reality, because reality will always win out. And so these three pieces work together. And consider now we put it all together. Something occurs in the environment, something's starting to change. I feel it, I sense it, I understand something is shifting. So I change myself, I adapt what is needed, I feel all my emotions, I integrate everything I need to within myself, and I put together a strategy to move myself, my people, my resources in a direction in line with how the situation is evolving. And along the way, I know how to manage myself, I know how to change myself, I know how to transform myself so that I can make this strategy work. That is a true leader, and that leader cannot be defeated because there is no failure when you can fully adapt to the situation and fully adapt yourself. That person has covered all their bases. So if something still doesn't work, then truly it wasn't meant to be. There's nothing within your control that could ever change that thing. And that needs to be accepted too. That nothing within your efforts, nothing within your leadership could change this outcome. But then you haven't failed because you've still maximized your leadership. You've maximized what was within your cards. If an asteroid hits Earth tomorrow, I don't feel like a failure. I just feel like that's an event that happened and now I'm dead. So what I am in control of, I can attend to, and that is where I succeed and fail. Anything beyond that is beyond my scope. It's beyond my role. So this is the master leadership model. The self, the situation, the strategy. When we put it all together, it's the key and the tools to get us where we need. The beautiful thing about the master leadership model, it is all inclusive, everything belongs, all the strategies, all the styles belong under it. You can be a servant leader and an authoritarian leader. You can be laissez-faire and bureaucratic. It depends what the situation and the strategy is asking for. It depends what is needed. All styles, all different ways of being are needed in certain moments to be successful. But the important thing is to bring intention, consciousness, awareness to this process. So we know what strategies we're employing and why we're getting the results we're getting and how to change this to get what we want to get.